Hello, and welcome to day 11 of the Business English Idioms Challenge. I'm going to jump right in. Today, we are looking at adjusting strategy, idioms relating to adjusting strategy. As always, it would be a delight if you would enter into the comment section. Tell me, where are you from? Where are you watching from? Whether you choose to watch live or you're watching on the replay, welcome, and do make sure to join in. Try out the idioms. It's always good to start experimenting with them right away. Okay, just a reminder, you know what idioms are. They're things that expressions that you have to learn the literal meaning for. Just a reminder that they're used frequently in professional contexts by native speakers, but not used all at once. So native speakers will use them sparingly, so just a little bit in their conversation, and they're not used in written communication in a business context because they would be too informal. Today we're looking at idioms that are about changing strategy, and all of these idioms, today's a little bit different. All of them mean basically the same thing. They mean to make a change. So we're going to look at switch tracks, switch gears, change tack, make a U-turn, and change lanes. Have you heard any of those before? And how would they be used in a business context? Like I said, all of today's idioms are about making a strategic change. So they all mean the same thing, but there are slight nuances, so little differences that we will look at. So I'll give you an overview here, and then we'll come back and look at this in more detail. But to switch tracks is to make a change that's a major change from one project to another, but within the same area of focus. To switch gears is to adjust your effort, so to go faster or with more intensity. To change tack is about changing your methods because the methods weren't working. To make a U-turn is to turn around completely, to reverse a decision that you made before. And then the last one, to change lanes, is about shifting into a lateral or sideways move. So going into a different area, but within the same context. We will look at these, of course, in more detail, starting with switching tracks. Okay, so all of our idioms today are about changing strategy, but we're going to look in detail at this one. Okay. And I would just love to say, hello, hi, Wasim, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm always thrilled to see people live and excited when people interact in the comments, so welcome. Okay, to switch tracks, the origins of this are from the railroads. So if you think about tracks on a railway, at some point, trains might need to go in another direction. And so they come off of the tracks that they're on and switch onto other ones. When you talk about switching tracks, you're talking about a big shift, but within the same context. I think this is a little bit confusing unless we look at some examples. So let's look at some examples. So 2 example sentences. Here's the first one. He wasn't enjoying his job, so he decided to switch tracks to being self-employed. So he made a big change, but we're talking about a change within the same context of his employment, how he earns money. So it's a big shift, but it's within that conversation around what do you do for a living. Okay, number 2. The food cart wasn't profitable, selling only muffins, so they switched tracks to focus on selling coffee. Okay, so that's a big change, but it's within the same context of what are they selling on their food cart. Okay, so when you switch tracks, you make a big change in direction or strategy, especially abruptly, so that means quickly, kind of without warning. It's often a change to a new project in the same field. So we can talk about pivoting, altering course, changing direction. Pivoting, or to pivot, there's a good word. We heard that word a lot in the pandemic. Well, they certainly did in my country anyway. And it's a correct word to use for situations that happened in the pandemic where people had to switch tracks or pivot within their industry. So, for example, someone who was a personal trainer and worked in a gym, they couldn't work in a gym anymore because they were closed during the pandemic. So they had to switch tracks, make a big change, but within their industry, they or switched tracks or pivoted to teaching fitness online. So pivot was a word we heard a lot. And here we go, a COVID question, because that's obviously what my brain was thinking about in relation to this idea of switching tracks. Did you need to switch tracks career-wise during COVID? My goodness, I love this I want to say prefix, but it's not. I love this suffix wise. It is so useful. It means related to. So you can add that suffix onto many words and create a compound word that means related to. So how are you doing school wise? How are you doing homework wise? How are you doing project wise? It's really, really, really useful to use that. Anyway, your question was, did you need to switch tracks career-wise during COVID? So I did need to switch tracks career-wise during COVID because I was teaching in the classroom and I had to switch to teaching online. So that was my example. What about you? If you're watching live or watching on the replay, join in, put your example in the comments. And I've got an example here. I love it. Okay, we need to switch tracks, plural. So we need to switch tracks to get more benefits from this idea. That's a fantastic sentence. Good use of that idea of switching from one thing to another in order to move the project forward. So thank you for joining in, Wasim, and great sentence. Okay, we're going to move on to switch gears. This one, the origin is from driving. So when you switch gears, it's usually in a car. And switching the gears helps you make a change in the speed or intensity. So literally in a car, you change gears to go faster. So when we use this idiom, that is the connotation, the thought and the feeling that we're wanting to imply. So it's about adjusting effort or approach, usually to move up in intensity. Although you could also use it to talk about switching gears down, so moving gears and coming down in intensity. I will explain what I mean by that in a moment. Okay, so some example sentences. As the deadline approached, the team had to switch gears and start packing the orders more quickly. So the deadline's coming, they've got to go faster, they've got to work harder and faster. Okay. After completing the research phase, their work switched gears to focus on the development stage of the project. So they are switching gears into a new area. But oops, hang on. Let me let me go back. Switching gears into a new area. We're not sure whether it's faster, but perhaps more intense, different in some way. So switching gears or changing gears, you can use either word, switch or change, is about speed, intensity, or the focus. So that last example is about the focus and the approach. So they're changing their approach of what they're focusing on. They're not doing research now, they're doing development. So they're changing gears. So when we change or switch gears, we shift focus, we change direction, and we make a transition. Do you find it hard to switch gears when you get home after work? I wanted to include this question to remind you that you can switch gears to lower intensity. So most people, when they get home, they switch gears into being slower, more relaxed when they get home. So a good reminder that switch gears can mean to change and work faster and be more intense, or it can be to slow down. So I do find it hard to switch gears after work. because my brain is always working on overtime. So I find it useful to go to the gym before I come home, because that transition from work to gym helps me to switch gears and start to slow down. Here's a really great example. Thank you, Wasim, for that. We have to switch gears to get maximum productivity. Great example. So it's saying, come on, we've got to put in more intensity here. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to look at change tack. Now, tack is a tricky word because it can mean to pin something, and that's how we would often hear that word used. It also can mean the equipment that's put on a horse. That is also tack. Gosh, English can be difficult, but this is different. A tack in this context basically means a direction. And so if you are changing tack, you are making a strategic adjustment and changing direction. I am no expert on sailing, but this is what I understand tacking is. Basically, it's changing direction back and forth while you are sailing, so that you can control where the sailboat is heading when the wind is in different directions. So rather than, you can't just go straight forward, you go sideways one way and then tack back the other way and tack back that way. And you need to change direction in order to get where you're going. Okay, so that's where it originally comes from, this context of being a nautical context, nautical meaning related to boats. How do we use it in a business context? Here's some examples. The advent of AI has meant many copywriters have had to change tack. So to change tack means to change the approach or strategy. The advent of something means the notable arrival, famous or notable or important arrival. So that's a very formal way of saying the arrival of AI. So the advent, there's a good word. AI, of course, meaning artificial intelligence. So basically, artificial intelligence has come along and helped people be able to write quickly and easily. And so people who write copy, that is words that are used for marketing purposes, they've had to change tack, they've had to change their strategy. And perhaps they offer, more specialized work, or they offer help in using AI, but they've had to change how they are working because of the arrival of AI. Okay, example number 2. I told them we are ready to sign if they can lower their price, but they refused. I think we need to change tack on our negotiations. Okay, so the negotiations are not working, the strategy's not working. So they're saying we've got to change our strategy because it's not working. So if we are changing tack, we can talk about changing course, altering approach, shifting strategy, pivoting. With change tack, you can't say switch tack. It would seem weird. So with some of them, you can use change your tack, but with change tack, those two words always go together. So only change, never switch. So change tack. Okay, how do you usually know when it is time to change tack? What are some of the signs that help you understand that a new strategy is needed? So I know it's time to change tack when, what would I say? Personally, for me, I know it's time to change tack when I'm getting really overly tired despite putting in effort. So that's a sign that things are not working as well as they should. Okay, great example here. Political parties should not only change tack, but give hands to each other for development. I'm not quite sure what you mean by give hands, but help each other out or give a helping hand perhaps. But that's a good context, Wasim, in terms of political parties are always changing tack, changing strategies. Thank you for joining in. I love when people do it. It's amazing. Okay, idioms about changing strategy. Continued. Part 4, what are we on? So if you are making a U-turn, this idiom comes from, the origin of it is from driving. It is about turning around in your car to go back in the direction you just came from. So it is used in business when we talk about making a complete reversal, completely reversing a decision or strategy. So here's some examples. The company made a U-turn on its pricing strategy after receiving negative feedback from customers. So they said, we're going to double our prices. And then everyone said, oh, that's terrible. I don't want to purchase this anymore. And so they said, oh, okay, no, actually, we're not. They made a U-turn. They took it back. Example number 2. After realizing the environmental impact, the government decided to make a U-turn on its previously confirmed plans to build new hotels along the beach. Oh, that one is probably not realistic, I have to admit. I wish it was, though. There are many places in the world where they're building on the beaches and they perhaps shouldn't be. So in this example, they've realized, gosh, we shouldn't be, and they've turned that decision around, reversed it, they've made a U-turn. Let's just notice that make a U-turn is very informal. So you need to be careful how you're using that. Obviously only in spoken English, but it is very informal. If you're looking for some more formal ways of talking about making a U-turn, here's some synonyms. So reverse course, backtrack, about face, do a 180, they're all informal. But this last one is very formal. So if you needed to use this in a written context, this would be better for a written context. To renege on a promise. To renege on a promise. Or even to backtrack on a promise would be okay. But renege on a promise is very formal. To renege means to go back on or to reverse a promise. So if you renege on a promise, you fail to do what you said you were going to do because you have turned around and completely changed what you promised to do. So really great formal phrase there, to renege on a promise. Okay, going back to make a U-turn. Have you ever noticed a political U-turn being made? I think most people that live on planet Earth have unfortunately recognized a political U-turn being made. Often happens in politics, where something will be promised and then, they renege on that promise. So I see some great examples in the comments. I'm not going to read all of them out because we're going to move forward, but thank you for joining in, and I'm going to go back and look at the comments after, but those are fantastic comments that are coming in. It's amazing when people comment. I love it. Okay, so if you were watching on the replay, have a think how you could write a sentence describing a U-turn. And the last one is also a driving related idiom, and it is to change lanes, which means to shift or to start shifting focus or the area that you're working in within the same context. So a lateral or sideways move. What does that mean? Well, let's look at some examples. So if we're making a lateral move or to shift focus or direction, often in a career or project. For example, after managing a team in the accounts office, Sally decided to change lanes and pursue a career as an office manager. So still working in management, still working in the office, but she has switched from working in the accounts department to just being a general office manager. So same context, but just a slight sideways or lateral shift. Example number 2, the team needed to change lanes and refocus on customer satisfaction rather than solely on product development. So they're focused on how can they make things the best that they can, but they just need to shift their focus a little bit into a new area. Okay, so this one we can use change or switch. Either one is okay. They're both equally the same. So change or switch lanes. It means to shift direction, to transition, again to pivot really. So we can talk about to change lanes to something, change lanes to the account, to being an office manager, for example, or change lanes from. So she changed lanes from being in the accounts department. Okay, over to you. Is it easy for people in your field to change lanes? Can they shift their focus easily into something similar? I know for me, it isn't easy for people in my field to change lanes because education is quite niched down. It's quite focused and quite a specialized area. So it's quite tricky for people to change lanes in my field. What about for you? Have a think about that. Have a practice. Okay, here's a bonus one that when I was thinking about change lanes, the opposite came to mind for me. So this one is not about change, but I think I'll just squeeze this bonus one in here. Okay, so to stay in your lane means to focus on your responsibilities. It is informal, but can be polite if used generally. For example, we sell cake. I don't think we should sell a bread product. We should stay in our lane. So I'm talking generally about the company that I work for and the product that we sell, and in an informal context saying we should focus on what we do best, that would be acceptable. But it would not be polite to tell someone else to stay in their own lane. That would come across as very rude. If you needed to do that, but in a polite way, you might want to try a phrase such as this one. Perhaps we should each stay within our own area of expertise. Okay, perhaps is a softener. It takes away the kind of harsh sting of the criticism. So perhaps it's a good softener. And then staying within our own area of expertise is more polite. It's still a little bit harsh, but it's better because it is recognizing the other person does have an area of expertise. But if you say mind your business or stay in your lane, then that's quite rude. But it's a useful one to know. And again, you can talk about it generally. If you're talking about something that should require extreme focus in one place and not changing lanes, then it would be okay to say, I think we should stay in our lane. So that's a good one to know. Change your lanes means to switch focus. Stay in your lane means the opposite. Okay, let's do a really short quiz. I would love if you play along in the comment section. Have a think. What do you think would be the answer? So number one, the company made a something on its pricing strategy after receiving negative feedback from customers. I think this is quite similar to the example I gave, so hopefully this one should be clear. Okay, A, switch tracks, B, change tack, or C, U-turn. Number two, after revolutionizing the gaming industry with a groundbreaking virtual reality game, they decided to something and move into creating racing video games. They decided to A, switch gears, B, change lanes, or C, turn the page? What do you think? Can you feel out what would be the correct answer for that? Okay, I'm going to show you. Number one, the company made a U-turn on its pricing strategy. And number two, after revolutionizing the gaming industry with a groundbreaking virtual reality game, they decided to change lanes. So they changed their focus within the same area. You perhaps could use switch gears, but that would be change the meaning a little bit, and that would depend on the context. So the one that immediately makes the most sense is to change lanes, to switch focus, but within the same field. Okay, that is it for today. I am delighted that you joined me. Just a reminder that I will put in the description a link to the free resource library where I am slowly building out a course that goes with these lives. And I do hope you can join me tomorrow. Thank you, those of you that were here live. I really appreciate it. Thank you, those of you watching on the replay. Take care. Bye for now.